The night sky over Voronezh erupted in chaos as the city was suddenly transformed into a battlefield. Residents were jolted awake by the thunderous roar of explosions, their windows rattling as shockwaves rolled through the streets. For many, it was a night they would never forget, a night when war came home. In a series of deafening explosions, the darkness was pierced by fireballs and plumes of smoke rising high above the city. The scale of destruction was unlike anything the region had seen before, with each blast echoing for miles. Ukrainian drones, flying undetected across hundreds of kilometers, struck a massive Russian ammunition depot with pinpoint accuracy. The attack was a testament to Ukraine's growing technological prowess, and its ability to strike at the very heart of Russian military infrastructure. It was July 4, 2025, a date that would mark a turning point in the war. The world watched in shock as live footage and satellite images confirmed the scale of the devastation. The inferno destroyed thousands of tons of munitions, sending secondary explosions into the night and crippling Russian logistics for the southern front. The loss of such a vast stockpile meant that Russian forces would struggle to resupply their troops, weakening their ability to sustain offensive operations. The message to Moscow was clear: Ukraine's reach now extended deep into Russian territory, far beyond the front lines. No place was truly safe, and the psychological impact on Russian leadership and citizens alike was profound. For the Kremlin, the loss was catastrophic, exposing the vulnerability of their supply lines and the limits of their military machine. The attack forced Russian commanders to rethink their strategies and highlighted the growing risks of a prolonged conflict. With reserves dwindling and the political cost of another mass mobilization too high, Putin faced a grim reality. The Russian public, already weary from years of war, was in no mood for further sacrifices. The government's options were narrowing by the day. Russia needed soldiers, cheap, expendable, and politically invisible. The answer, it seemed, lay in North Korea, a regime willing to trade manpower for desperately needed resources and diplomatic support. The Voronezh strike became the final push for a desperate pact. Behind closed doors, Russian and North Korean officials negotiated a deal that would change the course of the conflict. Russia turned to Pyongyang, setting in motion a plan to bring tens of thousands of North Korean fighters to Europe. These troops would fill the gaps in Russian ranks, but their arrival would also escalate tensions and draw new players into the war. The flames in Voronezh didn't just destroy ammunition, they ignited a new dangerous phase of the war. The attack signaled a shift in tactics, with both sides now willing to take greater risks and escalate the conflict further. Regional conflicts and global alliances were blurring, ushering in a terrifying new reality. Nations around the world watched nervously, aware that the war's next phase could spill far beyond Ukraine's borders. The world was about to witness the consequences. As alliances shifted and new actors entered the fray, the fate of Europe, and perhaps the world, hung in the balance. North Korea's decision to send 30,000 troops to Ukraine isn't about ideology, it's business. This move is less about supporting Russia's cause and more about securing vital resources and technology for the regime's survival. For Pyongyang, war is an opportunity. Kim Jong-un saw opportunity in Russia's desperation: hard currency, food, and most importantly, advanced military technology. As Russia's war drags on and its need for manpower grows, North Korea steps in, leveraging its soldiers as bargaining chips on the global stage. Russia pays Pyongyang for each soldier, with most of the money going straight to the regime. This influx of cash helps fund North Korea's isolated economy, propping up Kim's government and financing further military ambitions. North Korea's military becomes a state-sponsored mercenary force, exporting its people for profit. For many young North Koreans, deployment is not a choice but an order, with families left behind hoping for their safe return. The deal includes Russian grain, oil, and, crucially, technology transfers: ballistic missiles, satellite tech, even nuclear submarine designs. These transfers could dramatically boost North Korea's military capabilities, making the regime even more dangerous and unpredictable. Previous deployments of North Korean volunteers suffered horrific casualties, used as human wave attackers and minefield clearers. The cost in human life is staggering, but the regime sees these losses as acceptable in pursuit of its goals. Yet for Kim, soldiers are a renewable resource. The regime is willing to pay the price for strategic gain. The state's propaganda machine glorifies sacrifice, convincing citizens that their suffering serves a greater national purpose. The arrival of 30,000 more troops marks a major escalation. This is not just a symbolic gesture. These soldiers will be on the front lines, directly impacting the conflict's outcome. Both Moscow and Pyongyang are doubling down, sacrificing lives for military victory and regime survival. Their partnership is growing stronger, united by mutual need and shared defiance of the West. This is a grim trade, one that signals a deepening, dangerous alliance. The world is watching as these two isolated regimes draw closer, raising the risk of wider conflict. The stakes have never been higher. With every new deployment, the cost of this alliance grows, not just for North Korea and Russia, but for global security as a whole. The arrival of North Korean troops in Ukraine didn't surprise military analysts. For over a year, experts like General Ben Hodges warned that Russia's losses would force Putin to seek manpower from unconventional sources. North Korea was the obvious candidate, a vast obedient military and a history of trading bodies for technology. Intelligence tracked growing ties, diplomatic visits, suspicious cargo, and warming rhetoric between Moscow and Pyongyang. Early deployments were small and secretive, but reports of captured non-Russian soldiers soon surfaced. North Koreans were used in brutal battles, suffering high casualties, but the numbers were initially too small to provoke a global response. Now, with 30,000 troops announced, the warnings have come true. The West's slow response allowed the Russia-North Korea axis to solidify. What began as a trickle is now a torrent, threatening to shift the war's balance. In geopolitics, the unthinkable can become reality, fast. The supply line from North Korea to Ukraine is relentless. Artillery shells and rockets leave North Korean ports, travel by sea to Vladivostok, then cross Russia by rail to the front. Millions of shells have already been shipped. Now, troop trains carry North Korean soldiers west. These aren't elite forces. They're regular infantry, often from construction brigades equipped with old Soviet gear. Their training is basic discipline and obedience, not modern warfare. Russian commanders see them as expendable, useful for overwhelming Ukrainian defenses by sheer numbers. For Russia, this pipeline plugs gaps in manpower and munitions. For North Korea, it's a chance to gain combat experience and secure vital aid. What started with shells has become a flood of men, a new military alliance reshaping the battlefield. The flow is only growing. For Russia, every dead soldier is a political and financial liability, but a dead North Korean? No headlines, no protests, no payouts to grieving families. The Kremlin pays Pyongyang a fee, far less than the cost of a Russian casualty. North Korean troops are human ammunition, fired at Ukrainian positions to save Russian lives. Their motivation is survival and obedience, not patriotism. They fight because refusal means punishment for themselves and their families. Russian commanders have little incentive to protect them, using them for the most dangerous tasks: frontal assaults, minefield clearing, drawing enemy fire. This callous strategy saves Russian blood and political capital. North Koreans aren't comrades, they're a resource to be expended. Their presence allows Russia to sustain the war's intensity without paying the full price. The battlefield is now a grim equation, expendable lives for strategic gain. The true cost is measured in bodies, not loyalty, and the toll keeps rising. Integrating 30,000 North Korean troops into the Russian military is a logistical and cultural nightmare. Language barriers cripple command and control, leading to chaos and deadly mistakes. Few translators can bridge the gap, making coordination nearly impossible. Russian soldiers distrust their North Korean counterparts, seeing them as expendable mercenaries. Supplies are withheld, and North Koreans are often used as bait in dangerous operations. The North Koreans know their expendable status, fueling silent resentment. Logistical integration is a mess: different equipment, incompatible supplies, and isolated supply chains. This vulnerability is a target for Ukrainian forces who exploit the lack of cohesion. Psychological operations encourage North Koreans to surrender, deepening the rift. Russia's solution for manpower has created new weaknesses, ones Ukraine is eager to exploit. Russia's use of North Korean troops isn't a stopgap, it's a long-term strategy. New bases are rising near Ukraine's border, built to house and train foreign soldiers. Satellite images show sprawling compounds, barracks, and dedicated supply lines. These aren't temporary camps, they're designed for a continuous rotation of North Korean forces. The bases serve as integration centers, logistical hubs, and training grounds. Russia is institutionalizing the use of foreign mercenaries, planning for a war of attrition that could last years. This infrastructure means Russia can keep importing fresh troops, turning the conflict into a demographic battle. The West's strategy of bleeding Russia dry is now far more complicated. The war is no longer just Russia versus Ukraine, it's a struggle against a growing authoritarian axis. Despite the influx of foreign fighters, Ukraine isn't backing down. Its forces use precision drone strikes to devastate Russian logistics and command centers far behind the front. The Voronezh depot attack was just the beginning. Ukraine's innovation in drone warfare is its great equalizer. Tens of thousands of FPV drones are produced monthly. These cheap, deadly drones hunt soldiers and vehicles with pinpoint accuracy, blunting Russian and North Korean assaults. But Western support is faltering, and ammunition is running low. Ukraine's commanders are forced to ration fire, sometimes ceding ground. The outcome now hinges on whether Western aid can keep pace with Russia's imported manpower. Courage and innovation give Ukraine an edge, but they can't stop a flood of artillery and soldiers alone. The clock is ticking, and the world is watching. The arrival of 30,000 North Korean soldiers in Ukraine is not just a shift on the battlefield, it's a geopolitical earthquake that sends shockwaves far beyond the front lines. This unprecedented move marks a turning point in the conflict, signaling a new era of international involvement and raising the stakes for every nation watching. What we're witnessing is the birth of a new axis of power, one that forges a direct link between the war raging in Europe and the simmering tensions of East Asia. The world's attention is now split, as alliances and rivalries cross continents and oceans, creating a web of consequences that no one can fully predict. Russia stands to gain a surge in manpower, while North Korea is poised to receive advanced military technology and economic support. Together they are mounting a direct challenge to the Western-led order, testing the resolve and unity of NATO and its allies. For NATO, the threat is no longer confined to one region. With North Korean troops now present on European soil, the alliance faces a security dilemma that stretches from the Baltic to the Pacific, forcing a re-evaluation of defense strategies and commitments. The technology transfers and deepening cooperation between Russia and North Korea could destabilize the already fragile Korean peninsula, putting South Korea and Japan on high alert. The risk of a regional arms race is growing, as both nations scramble to bolster their defenses. Yet, North Korean troops, trained for massed assaults and conventional warfare, may find themselves dangerously exposed to Ukraine's sophisticated drone tactics. The likelihood of catastrophic losses is high, raising questions about how long North Korea can sustain its involvement. The risk of escalation is very real. A Western-supplied missile striking North Korean forces could trigger unpredictable and potentially explosive responses from Pyongyang or Moscow, drawing more countries into the conflict. The world is rapidly dividing into hostile blocs, with tensions and mistrust running higher than at any point since the Cold War. The potential for miscalculation and unintended escalation has never been greater. The decisions made in Washington, Brussels, and Kyiv over the coming weeks will be critical. Their choices will determine whether this new axis of power can be contained, or if the conflict will spiral into something even more dangerous. The war for Ukraine has become much more than a struggle for territory. It is now a battle for the very future of the world order, with consequences that will echo for generations. The stakes have never been higher, and the world is watching with bated breath as history unfolds before our eyes.